Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Money 3. Tonight, we embark on a journey that the nation needs to take. A journey through the dark underbelly of India's financial history. From the moment of our independence in 1947, right up to the projected technological terrors of 2025, we will dissect, we will analyze, and we will present a comprehensive, no-holds-barred timeline of the most notorious scams that have plagued our great nation. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a chronicle of betrayal, a saga of greed that has shaken the very foundations of our republic. The nation demands accountability, and tonight we provide the facts. We will trace the very evolution of corruption in India. We'll start with the shadowy political scandals of the past, the backroom deals, the briefcase politics that decided the fate of millions. Then we'll move to the brazen corporate frauds that looted our banks and manipulated our stock markets. And finally, we will expose the new frontier of financial crime, sophisticated high-tech cyber frauds, where artificial intelligence and deepfakes are the new weapons of choice for the modern-day scamster. It's a story of how the methods changed, but the motive, insatiable greed, remained the same. This is not a story I can tell alone. This is a national conversation. I want you, the people of India, to be a part of this. As we go through this timeline, if there is a scam, a scandal, a moment of deceit that you feel needs a deeper investigation, I want you to tell me. Comment below which specific scam you want a full, detailed, deep dive episode on. Your voice matters. Your demand for truth matters. Let's begin, because tonight, the nation wants to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Let's begin in the 1990s, a decade of turmoil and transition. And at the heart of this turmoil was a simple diary. Not just any diary, ladies and gentlemen, but a diary that held the secrets of India's political elite. The Hawala Scandal wasn't about complex financial instruments. It was about the oldest form of corruption, illicit cash changing hands in the shadows. Hawala brokers, operating a parallel illegal banking system, were caught funneling vast sums of money, allegedly from foreign sources, directly into the pockets of our most powerful politicians. The question is simple, and the nation wants to know, how could the system be so compromised? The names that emerged from the pages of that diary were not minor players. They were giants of Indian politics, cutting across all party lines. We are talking about cabinet ministers, chief ministers, and leaders of the opposition. The allegations were explosive, that these leaders received crores of rupees in illegal payments, a direct assault on the democratic process. This wasn't just corruption, it was a subversion of the people's mandate. It raised a fundamental question that still haunts us today. Who truly funds our political system? Is it the voter, or is it the shadowy network of Hawala operators? Ultimately, while the case sent shockwaves through the country and tarnished reputations, the legal outcome was, for many, deeply unsatisfying. Most of the accused were acquitted due to a lack of substantial, corroborating evidence beyond the diary entries themselves. The diary was deemed insufficient as primary proof, but the court of public opinion had delivered its verdict. The Hawala Scandal exposed the deep-rooted nexus between politicians and black money, a wound on our democracy that, I argue tonight, has never truly healed. The nation still awaits answers. In the late 1980s, India sought to modernize its artillery. A deal was signed with the Swedish arms manufacturer Bofors for state-of-the-art howitzer guns. On the surface, it was a matter of national security, a proud moment of military upgradation. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Allegations erupted, not from India, but from a Swedish radio station, claiming that massive kickbacks, bribes, had been paid to top Indian politicians and defense officials to secure the deal. The very hands meant to defend the nation were accused of taking money to compromise it. The nation was in shock. The scandal reached the highest office in the land, directly implicating the then Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, and his government. The figure wasn't small. We are talking about millions of dollars allegedly paid into secret Swiss bank accounts. The name Ottavio Quattrocchi, an Italian businessman with close ties to the Gandhi family, became synonymous with the scandal. For years, the narrative was about denial, about political whataboutery. But the evidence, the paper trail, however convoluted, pointed towards a massive cover-up. The question was simple: who received the money? Who betrayed the nation's trust? The Bofors scandal became more than just a defense deal gone wrong. It became a symbol of high-level corruption that could topple a government. It dominated the 1989 general elections, leading to the defeat of the Congress Party. For decades, investigative agencies chased ghost accounts and elusive middlemen across continents. While the legal cases dragged on for years, often ending in acquittals or being closed due to lack of evidence, the political and public fallout was immense. The Bofors guns may have been effective on the battlefield, but the scandal's political shrapnel wounded the nation's psyche for a generation. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to a scam so audacious, so brazen in its execution, that it almost defies belief. The fodder scam, or Chara Gotala, from the state of Bihar. This wasn't about complex international arms deals or stock market manipulation. This was about something far more basic: funds allocated for livestock, for fodder, for medicine for animals, being systematically siphoned off by a corrupt nexus of politicians and bureaucrats. We are talking about hundreds of crores of rupees meant for the poorest of the poor vanishing into thin air. It's a story of absolute, bottomless greed. The modus operandi was shockingly simple. Officials in the animal husbandry department, in collusion with suppliers and politicians, would create fake records. They would submit forged bills for livestock and fodder that were never purchased. Vast sums of money were withdrawn from the state treasury against these phantom supplies. We are talking about documents showing tons of animal feed being transported on scooters and motorcycles. The sheer absurdity of the methods highlights the impunity with which the perpetrators operated. They believed they were above the law, that no one would ever check, that no one would ever dare to question them. The central figure in this saga was the then Chief Minister of Bihar, Lalu Prasad Yadav. The investigation, driven by the CBI, meticulously unraveled a conspiracy that went to the very top. The legal battles were long and protracted, but unlike many other cases, this one led to convictions. Lalu Prasad Yadav was convicted in multiple cases related to the scam, a landmark moment in India's fight against corruption. The fodder scam stands as a stark reminder of how systemic corruption can hollow out a state's finances and directly steal from the welfare of its most vulnerable, be they people or the animals they depend on. The year is 1992. India is on the cusp of economic liberalization. The stock market, the Bombay Stock Exchange, is the new temple of wealth, and its high priest is a man named Harshad Mehta. Known as the Big Bull, he was a charismatic, ambitious stockbroker who seemed to have the Midas touch. The market was soaring to unprecedented heights, and it really seemed like Harshad Mehta could do no wrong. Small investors poured their life savings into the market, riding the wave he created. But this wave was not built on economic fundamentals. It was a tsunami of deceit built on a foundation of stolen money. Mehta's genius was not in picking stocks, ladies and gentlemen. His genius was in exploiting the loopholes of the banking system. He illegally siphoned off thousands of crores from the interbank market using fake bank receipts, or BRs. These were essentially IOUs between banks, and Mehta, in collusion with corrupt bank officials, created forged BRs that were not backed by any actual government securities. He used this massive pool of money, which belonged to the banks and their depositors, to artificially inflate the prices of specific stocks on the BSE. He created a bubble of epic proportions. The bubble had to burst, and when it did, the crash was catastrophic. The stock market collapsed, wiping out the wealth of millions of small investors overnight. The scam exposed the shocking lack of regulation and the deep rot within the Indian banking system. Harshad Mehta's famous line, "Risk is my bread and butter," became a cautionary tale for an entire generation. The scam of '92 led to a complete overhaul of financial regulations, the establishment of SEBI as a powerful watchdog, and forever changed the way India looked at its stock markets. It was a brutal lesson in the dangers of unchecked greed. Just when the nation thought it had learned its lesson from the Harshad Mehta saga, History repeated itself, not as a tragedy, but as a calculated, high-tech farce. Enter Ketan Parekh, a chartered accountant and a protege of Harshad Mehta himself. At the turn of the millennium during the dot-com boom, Parekh became the new Pied Piper of the stock market. He championed technology, media and telecom stocks, the so-called K10 stocks, and their prices soared to dizzying, irrational heights. Once again, a bull run was being manufactured, and the nation wants to know, how did we let it happen again? Parekh's methods were more sophisticated than his mentors. He mastered the art of circular trading and pump-and-dump schemes. He used a vast network of shell companies and multiple bank accounts to trade within his own group, creating artificial volume and driving up the prices of his chosen K10 stocks. He would then dump these inflated stocks onto unsuspecting retail investors and institutional funds, reaping massive profits. He obtained huge loans from banks like Madhavpura Mercantile Cooperative Bank, often without adequate collateral, to fuel his manipulative activities. The unraveling began in 2001, when a payment crisis hit the Calcutta Stock Exchange, triggered by Parekh's network. The Madhavpura Bank collapsed, and the stock market crashed, wiping out over 1 lakh crore of investor wealth. The dot-com bubble burst in India, not just because of global trends, but because it was pricked by the pin of Ketan Parekh's fraud. The scam exposed that despite the post-1992 reforms, critical gaps remained, especially in the cooperative banking sector and in monitoring market manipulation. Ketan Parekh was eventually banned from the markets, but the saga was a chilling reminder that the demons of market rigging are never truly vanquished. We now turn to a scam of breathtaking scale, one that didn't just target the financial markets, but struck at the very heart of the government's revenue system. This is the story of Abdul Karim Telgi and the counterfeit stamp paper racket. For years, Telgi ran a massive, nationwide criminal enterprise, printing and selling fake stamp papers. These are not postage stamps, ladies and gentlemen. These are judicial stamp papers required for every legal contract, from property registration to insurance policies. Telgi's operation created a parallel economy, defrauding state governments of an estimated 30,000 crore rupees. How did one man build such an empire? The answer is collusion. Telgi, who started his life as a vegetable vendor, allegedly bribed his way through the system. He procured obsolete printing machinery from the government's own security press in Nashik. He built a distribution network that spanned at least 12 states, involving hundreds of agents, police officials, and government employees. For a decade, his high-quality forgeries were almost indistinguishable from the real thing, used in property deals, legal agreements, and financial transactions, making countless contracts legally void and creating a logistical nightmare for the judicial system. The unraveling of Telgi's empire was a slow and painstaking process, but it exposed a level of systemic rot that was staggering. The investigation revealed the deep nexus between criminals, police, and politicians. Telgi was arrested in 2001, and the subsequent legal proceedings resulted in convictions for him and several of his associates, including police officials. The Telgi stamp paper scam was a wake-up call, forcing a complete overhaul of the system, leading to the franking of documents and the eventual move towards e-stamping. It proved that the biggest threats to the nation can sometimes come from a simple piece of paper. For years, Satyam Computer Services was the jewel in the crown of India's booming IT industry. It was, honestly, a symbol of Indian excellence on the global stage, a celebrated company with impeccable credentials, winning awards for corporate governance. Its founder, Ramalinga Raju, was, basically the poster boy for the new global Indian entrepreneur. But then, on January 7th, 2009, this entire edifice of lies came crashing down. In a stunning confession, Raju himself admitted to perpetrating a massive, long-running accounting fraud. It was India's Enron moment, a betrayal of trust that sent shockwaves across the corporate world. The scale of the fraud was, frankly, mind-boggling. Ramalinga Raju confessed to inflating the company's balance sheet for years. He had fabricated revenues, inflated profits, and created a fictitious cash reserve of over 7,000 crore rupees. The numbers that global investors and Indian shareholders had trusted were, pure fiction. The company was a hollow shell. And the motive? To keep the stock price artificially high, to project an image of success that was far from reality, and to use the inflated stock as collateral for other business ventures. It was all a house of cards built on a foundation of digital deception. The confession triggered a crisis of confidence in Indian corporate governance. The Satyam stock plummeted, investors lost fortunes, and the livelihoods of 50,000 employees were at stake. The government stepped in swiftly to salvage the company, appointing a new board and overseeing its sale to Tech Mahindra in what was really a landmark rescue operation. The Satyam scandal led to a complete overhaul of corporate governance norms and auditing standards in India. It served as a brutal lesson that in the corporate world, the numbers can lie, and the brightest stars can sometimes hide the darkest secrets. Ladies and gentlemen, we now address a scam that is not about theft in the traditional sense, but about a colossal notional loss to the nation's treasury, the 2G spectrum allocation scam. In 2008, the Indian government, under the UPA regime, allocated second-generation or 2G spectrum licenses to telecom operators. Spectrum is a finite sovereign resource. It belongs to the people of India. The question the nation asks is, why was this precious national asset sold off at throwaway prices? Why was a first-come, first-served policy adopted instead of a transparent auction? The Comptroller and Auditor General of India, the KAG, blew the whistle. In a damning report, the CAG estimated that the allocation policy had caused a presumptive loss to the exchequer of a staggering 1,76,000 crore rupees. That's 176,000 crores. The report alleged that ineligible companies were granted licenses, that the first-come, first-served policy was manipulated, and that the 2001 prices used for the 2008 allocation were ridiculously outdated. The telecom minister at the time, A. Raja, was at the center of the storm, accused of orchestrating the entire conspiracy. The political fallout was immense. The 2G scam became a symbol of the corruption that plagued the UPA-2 government. It led to protests, parliamentary logjams, and eventually the arrest of A. Raja and other high-profile individuals. In a landmark judgment in 2012, the Supreme Court of India cancelled all 122 licenses that were allocated in 2008, calling the process unconstitutional and arbitrary. While a subsequent CBI special court acquitted all the accused citing lack of evidence, the 2G scam fundamentally changed how India allocates its natural resources, making auctions the mandatory transparent route. It was, honestly, a costly lesson in public policy and integrity. In 2010, the Commonwealth Games came to Delhi. It was meant to be a moment of national pride, a showcase of India's ability to host a world-class international event. But long before the first athlete crossed the finish line, the event was mired in a race of a different kind, a race for illicit profits. Allegations of widespread corruption, mismanagement, and criminal conspiracy turned a celebration of sport into a national embarrassment. The nation wants to know, how did an event meant to bring glory to India bring such shame? The corruption was allegedly rampant and multifaceted, from inflated contracts for building stadiums and the Games Village to the hiring of equipment at exorbitant rates. The misuse of funds was, well, staggering. We heard reports of treadmills being rented for lakhs of rupees, of time-scoring equipment being overpriced by Crores, and of dubious contracts being awarded to friendly firms without proper tendering. The chairman of the organizing committee, Suresh Kalmadi, became the face of the scandal, facing allegations of steering contracts to favored companies and orchestrating the financial irregularities. As the Games concluded, the investigative agencies moved in. The Central Vigilance Commission, the KG, and the CBI all launched probes into the irregularities. Suresh Kalmadi and other officials were arrested and charged with conspiracy and corruption. The scam exposed the ugly underbelly of organizing large-scale events in India, highlighting the ease with which public funds could be plundered under the guise of national prestige. The legacy of the 2010 Commonwealth Games is not just the world-class stadiums that were built, but the indelible stain of a scam that tarnished India's image on the world stage. We move from the airwaves of the 2G scam to the depths of the earth with the coal allocation scam, or, Coalgate. Between 2004 and 2009, the government allocated 194 coal blocks, the nation's precious coal reserves, to various public and private companies. Again, the core issue was the method. Instead of a transparent, competitive bidding process, these blocks were allocated by a screening committee. The question is simple. Was this process fair? Or was it a mechanism to favor the well-connected at the expense of the nation? The nation deserves to know. The KIAG once again raised the alarm. It tabled a report in Parliament in 2012, alleging that the non-transparent allocation process had resulted in private companies getting a massive windfall. The KAG estimated the loss to the national exchequer at 1.86 lakh crore rupees. The report claimed that the screening committee's process was arbitrary, that many of the companies that received the blocks had no prior experience in the sector, and that they simply sat on the blocks or sold their stakes at huge profits without ever mining a single ton of coal. It was, in effect, a privatization of national profit. The political firestorm was immediate and intense, as the Prime Minister at the time, Dr. Manmohan Singh, also held the coal ministry portfolio for a part of the period in question. The opposition paralysed Parliament, demanding his resignation. The Supreme Court stepped in, declaring the entire allocation process from 1993 to 2010 as illegal and arbitrary, and eventually cancelled 214 of the 218 coal block allocations. The Coalgate scandal, much like the 2G scam, was a powerful indictment of discretionary power and underscored the absolute necessity of transparent auctions for the allocation of our nation's finite natural resources. We now turn to a story of betrayal that preyed on the dreams of the common man. The Sarada Group and Rose Valley Chit Fund scams in eastern India, especially West Bengal, were not about looting the government, but about looting the people directly. These were classic Ponzi schemes, dressed up as legitimate investment opportunities, promising impossibly high returns to millions of small investors. They collected thousands of crores from the public, targeting the poor and the lower middle class who invested their life savings, hoping for a better future. The model was simple and predatory. The Sarada Group, led by Sudipta Sen, and the Rose Valley Group, led by Gautam Kundu, used a vast network of agents to collect deposits for their various schemes, involving tourism, real estate, and media. The money from new investors was used to pay off the earlier ones, creating an illusion of profitability and success. To gain credibility, they invested heavily in media outlets, sponsored mega events, and most critically, cultivated deep political connections, which provided them a cloak of legitimacy and protection. The House of Cards collapsed around 2013 when the schemes could no longer sustain the payouts. The result was a human tragedy of epic proportions. Millions of investors lost everything, leading to widespread protests and even suicides. The subsequent investigations by the CBI and ED revealed a deep nexus between the chit fund operators and powerful political figures in the region. The Sarada and Rose Valley scams are a heartbreaking reminder of how financial predators, aided by political patronage, can destroy the lives of millions who simply dared to dream. He was called the King of Good Times. A flamboyant liquor baron and airline tycoon, Vijay Mallya, personified a life of extravagant luxury. His Kingfisher Airlines, launched with great fanfare, promised a new era of luxury air travel in India. But behind the glamorous parties, the Formula One team and the private yachts was a mountain of debt. The collapse of Kingfisher Airlines and Mallya's subsequent flight from the country is a saga of crony capitalism, willful default, and honestly, a spectacular failure of the banking system to hold the powerful accountable. Kingfisher Airlines was never profitable. It bled money from day one. Yet a consortium of 17 Indian banks, led by the State Bank of India, continued to lend it thousands of crores of rupees. The question the nation asks tonight is, why? Why was due diligence seemingly ignored? Was it Mallya's larger-than-life persona, his political connections as a member of parliament, or a systemic rot that allowed one man to accumulate over 9,000 crore rupees in debt with little intention of paying it back. The airline eventually shut down in 2012, leaving thousands of employees unpaid and banks with a massive hole in their books. As the banks finally started to tighten the noose, in March 2016, Vijay Mallya fled India for the United Kingdom, just days before the lenders moved the Supreme Court to restrain him. What followed is a long, ongoing legal battle for his extradition. Mallya became the poster boy for a new category of offender, the fugitive economic offender. His case exposed the cozy relationship between big business and public sector banks, and it forced the government to enact stricter laws like the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act to prevent the powerful from simply running away from their financial crimes. If you thought the Vijay Mallya case was big, what came next was simply staggering: the ABG shipyard scam. This wasn't a high-profile, flamboyant default. This was a quiet, systematic and colossal fraud, which the CBI has called the biggest bank fraud in Indian history. ABG Shipyard Limited, a major player in the shipbuilding industry, allegedly cheated a consortium of 28 banks to the tune of over 22,842 crore rupees. The scale is almost incomprehensible. This wasn't just a loan gone bad, it was a calculated criminal conspiracy to defraud the entire banking system. The alleged modus operandi was complex and deeply deceptive. The company is accused of diverting loan funds given for its shipbuilding operations to overseas subsidiaries and related parties. It used a web of shell companies to round-trip the money back into India, investing it in other assets. The funds were allegedly used for purposes other than what they were sanctioned for, a clear case of criminal misappropriation. The forensic audit revealed that the fraud took place over a period of at least 5 years, from 2012 to 2017, right under the noses of the lending banks. The case brought to light the alarming weaknesses in the monitoring and appraisal of corporate loans by Indian banks. How could a fraud of this magnitude go undetected for so long? Questions were raised about the role of auditors, the bank officials who sanctioned and renewed the loans, and the overall lack of oversight. The ABG shipyard scam is a chilling example of corporate fraud evolving from simple non-payment to a sophisticated, multi-layered criminal operation designed to bleed the banking system dry, with the ultimate loss being borne by the Indian taxpayer. We now come to a scam that combined the glamour of the diamond world with the mundane reality of banking procedures. The Punjab National Bank fraud, orchestrated by celebrity jeweler Nirav Modi and his uncle Mehul Choksi. This wasn't about bad loans in the traditional sense. This was a fraud that exploited a specific banking instrument, the letter of undertaking or LU, to steal nearly 14,000 crore rupees from one of India's oldest public sector banks. It was a heist carried out not with guns, but with fraudulent paperwork and complicit bank officials. The mechanism was audacious. Junior officials at a single branch of PNB in Mumbai colluded with Nirav Modi's firms to issue hundreds of fraudulent loose. An LOU is essentially a guarantee from one Indian bank to another bank's foreign branch to grant a short-term loan to a client. These corrupt officials issued the loose without any collateral, and crucially, without ever entering them into the bank's core banking system. This meant the top management of PNB had no idea these massive guarantees were being issued. Other banks, trusting the PNB guarantee, kept lending money to Nirav Modi's overseas companies. The fraud came to light in January 2018 when the colluding officials had retired and a new official asked for collateral, exposing the entire charade. By then, both Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi had fled India, becoming the new faces of fugitive economic offenders just like Vijay Mallya. The scam resulted in a massive crisis at PNB, a regulatory crackdown by the RBI which discontinued the entire LOU system, and a furious public debate about the state of governance and risk management in our public sector banks. It was a stark lesson in how a few corrupt individuals could compromise an entire institution. In 2018, the Indian financial system was shaken by a black swan event. A company that was considered as safe as the government itself, a titan of infrastructure financing, began to default on its debt payments. This was Infrastructure Leasing and Financial Services, or IL&FS. For years, IL and FS was a blue-chip, AAA-rated behemoth, funding some of India's biggest infrastructure projects. Its collapse was not just a corporate failure, it triggered a massive liquidity crisis that threatened to engulf the entire non-banking financial company sector and the broader economy. The problem was a toxic combination of massive debt, opaque corporate structures, and risky bets. IL and FS had accumulated a debt of over 91,000 crore rupees. It operated through a complex web of over 300 subsidiaries, making it nearly impossible to get a clear picture of its financial health. It was borrowing short-term from the market to fund long-term infrastructure projects, creating a dangerous asset-liability mismatch. When the liquidity in the market tightened and it couldn't roll over its short-term debt, the defaults began, and the house of cards collapsed. The IL and FS crisis was a systemic shock. It caused a credit crunch, as mutual funds and other lenders, spooked by the default of a safe company, stopped lending to other NBFCs. The government had to step in, superseding the company's board in a rare move to prevent a contagion effect, calling it a matter of public interest. The saga exposed severe lapses by credit rating agencies that had given IL and FS a top rating until just before it defaulted, and it raised serious questions about corporate governance and risk management in the shadow banking sector. The shockwaves are still being felt today. Following the shock of the IL and FS crisis, another giant in the housing finance sector came under the Scanner Dewan Housing Finance Corporation Limited, or DHFL. This was, honestly, another story of a massive multi-crore fraud that shook investor confidence to its core. The CBI alleges a fraud of over 34,000 crore rupees, making it even larger than the ABG shipyard scam. DHFL, a company that was supposed to help middle-class Indians buy homes, was allegedly involved in a systematic conspiracy to siphon off public money through a web of shell companies and fictitious borrowers. The alleged modus operandi was, well, breathtaking in its scale and complexity. The promoters of DHFL, the Wadawan brothers, are accused of creating thousands of fake and fictitious home loan accounts in the names of non-existent borrowers. These loans, amounting to thousands of crores, were allegedly routed to shell companies and entities controlled by the promoters themselves. Essentially, DHFL was accused of lending money to itself, using the funds collected from public banks, mutual funds, and depositors. It was a gigantic circular fraud designed to enrich the promoters at the expense of the company and its lenders. The DHFL case became the first financial services firm to be sent to the bankruptcy tribunal under new insolvency laws. The investigation revealed a deep-rooted conspiracy involving falsification of accounts and round-tripping of funds. It further eroded trust in the NBFC sector and highlighted the urgent need for stricter regulatory oversight and forensic audits. For hundreds of thousands of depositors and investors, the DHFL saga was a devastating blow, another chapter in the story of corporate greed destroying public wealth and trust. We now shift gears from traditional corporate fraud to the new age of digital deception, and this one, honestly, has a bizarre twist. In Karnataka, hundreds of investors were duped by a mobile application that used the name of a global personality to lend it a false sense of credibility, the Trump app. No, it had no connection to the former US president. It was a classic investment scam, a digital Ponzi scheme that promised astronomical returns on investment, luring unsuspecting victims into a financial trap from which there was no escape. The scam was simple yet effective. The app, and others like it, would ask users to invest money, promising daily returns of up to 5 to 10%. Initially, to build trust, they would pay out small returns, encouraging investors to put in more and more money. They created a sense of legitimacy through slick interfaces and fake testimonials. Once a large corpus of money was collected, the app would simply stop functioning. The returns would stop, the website would disappear, and the scammers, often operating from outside the country, would vanish with crores of rupees. This case highlights the dark side of the digital revolution. Scammers are now using sophisticated marketing, social engineering, and the names of famous personalities to exploit the financial aspirations of ordinary people. The police investigation in Karnataka revealed a complex network, with money being routed through multiple mule accounts to crypto wallets, making it incredibly difficult to trace and recover the funds. The Trump app scam is a stark warning. In the digital world, if an investment opportunity seems too good to be true, it almost certainly is. The nation must be vigilant. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now entering the most frightening frontier of financial fraud. The scams of the future are already here. I'm talking about scams powered by artificial intelligence. Imagine getting a video call from your boss or a loved one. Their face, their voice, everything perfectly replicated, asking you for an urgent money transfer. This is not science fiction. This is the reality of deep fakes and AI-powered voice cloning. Criminals are using this technology to create hyper-realistic fake videos and audio to bypass human intuition and perpetrate sophisticated financial fraud. The process is terrifyingly accessible. Scammers can take a few seconds of a person's audio from a social media video and use AI software to clone their voice. They can take publicly available photos and videos to create a deepfake video. We have already seen cases where corporate executives have been tricked into transferring large sums of money by deepfake video calls from individuals impersonating their CEOs. For the common citizen, it could be a call from a family member in distress, a voice so convincing that it bypasses all suspicion. This is a paradigm shift in the nature of scams. It moves beyond fake emails and SMS messages to a direct, personal, and emotionally manipulative form of attack. The challenge for law enforcement and for us, the citizens, is immense. How do you verify if the person on the other end of the line is real? This new wave of AI-powered scams requires a new level of digital literacy and skepticism. The fight against fraud is no longer just about protecting your passwords. It's about questioning the very reality of what you see and hear. The nation needs to be prepared for this new war. The thirst for scams knows no bounds, and this one targets the intellectual credibility of our nation's brightest minds. I'm talking about the academic journal scam. In the highly competitive world of academia and professional research, getting published in a reputable journal is crucial for career advancement. Scammers have created a shadowy ecosystem of predatory journals. These are fake websites that perfectly mimic the look and feel of legitimate, high-impact academic journals, designed to trick researchers, doctors, and scientists into paying for publication. Here's how this sophisticated fraud works. A researcher, eager to get their work published, submits their manuscript to what they believe is a prestigious journal. They soon receive an acceptance letter, but it comes with a catch, a hefty article processing charge, often running into hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The desperate researcher pays the fee, believing it's a standard procedure. But the journal is a sham. Their research is either never published, or it's published on a worthless website with no academic standing, discoverability, or credibility. Their money is gone, and their research is tainted. This scam is particularly insidious because it preys on intellectual ambition and professional pressure. It not only defrauds individuals, but also pollutes the entire academic ecosystem with junk science and fake research. It undermines the very foundation of peer-reviewed, credible knowledge. Indian authorities and academic bodies are now fighting back, creating whitelists of approved journals and running awareness campaigns. This scam is a critical reminder that fraud targets every sector of society, and even our most educated citizens must remain eternally vigilant against these sophisticated digital predators. Finally, we come to a scam that is not just a financial crime, but an attack on the faith of millions. Every year, lakhs of pilgrims undertake the sacred Char Dham Yatra in the Himalayas. Many, especially the elderly, rely on helicopter services to reach the holy shrines. Taking advantage of this deep devotion, criminals have set up a network of fake helicopter booking websites. These fraudulent sites look almost identical to the official government portals, designed to trick pilgrims into paying for tickets that do not exist. The modus operandi is cruel and calculated. Scammers use search engine optimization to make their fake websites appear at the top of search results for Char Dham helicopter booking. Devotees, believing they are on the official site, enter their personal details, and make online payments. They receive fake booking confirmations and PNR numbers. It is often only when they reach the helipad in the remote mountains that they discover they have been duped, their money gone, and their pilgrimage plans shattered. It is a crime that exploits both faith and vulnerability. Thankfully, our law enforcement agencies are fighting back. Specialized cybercrime units are actively tracking these fraudulent websites and freezing the bank accounts and mobile numbers used by the scammers. In recent operations, crores of rupees in fraudulent funds have been intercepted and frozen, preventing them from reaching the criminals. This scam is a powerful final example of the evolving nature of fraud in India. From the political corridors of Delhi to the sacred peaks of the Himalayas, no one and no place is immune. The battle against these scamsters is a national duty. Tonight, we have journeyed through more than 7 decades of deceit. We have seen the face of corruption evolve, yet remain grotesquely the same in its intent. We began in the corridors of power with political scandals like Hawala and Bofus, where the system itself was compromised. We moved to the trading floors and boardrooms, where corporate titans like Harshad Mehta and Ramalinga Raju built empires on lies, looting our banks and markets. This was the era of the tangible scam, the file, the diary, the forged receipt. A long, dark, and sordid history of greed. But as our timeline crossed into the new millennium and hurtled towards the present, we witnessed a chilling transformation. The scam became digital, decentralized, and deeply personal. The new age criminal doesn't need political connections. They need a laptop and an understanding of human psychology. From fake investment apps using famous names to AI-powered deepfakes that can mimic your loved ones, the battlefield has shifted. The war against fraud is no longer just the CBI's or the ED's job. It is now being fought on our smartphones, in our inboxes, and in our minds. This is where you come in. This fight requires a vigilant, informed, and united citizenry. I ask you again, look at this timeline of betrayal and tell me, which story shook you the most? Which scam do you believe needs a full, hour-long investigation? Comment below and let the nation's voice be heard. We will take up the story you want us to tell. Thank you for joining me on Money $3 tonight. Stay informed, stay alert, and stay vigilant. Because in this new India, your awareness is the ultimate weapon. Good night.